Budget-friendly motherboard choices have finally arrived for Intel Coffee Lake CPUs, but are they any good? What's up guys, Jeff here back again for Modders Inc. Up until recently, buying an 8th generation Intel Coffee Lake CPU has required you to also purchase a high-end Z370 chipset motherboard. And unfortunately, those boards came with a high-end price tag to match, typically going for $200 or more. Today we're going to be taking a look at a new budget option from BioStar, the Racing B360 GT5S, just to see how many features $109 can get you. Starting off, this is an ATX motherboard with support for all Intel Coffee Lake CPUs on the 1151 socket, which means the i3-8100 and i5-8400 may finally start making sense for some budget gaming builds. There's 4 DIMM slots of DDR4 with support for up to 2666 MHz speeds, 3 PCIe X16 slots, and 2 M.2 slots. The uppermost supports NVMe or Intel Optane drives, while the lowermost supports M.2 SATA or NVMe storage. There's also up to 6 SATA ports available for all of your storage needs. Around the rear I/O, we find a pair of USB 2.0 ports, a mix of 3.1, Gen 1, and Gen 2 ports, as well as a Gen 2 Type-C connector, 3 display outputs with 4K support via HDMI 2.0, 1080p over DVI connector, and VGA? Come on BioStar, it's 2018. It's time to let that one go. Some other notable features include built-in overcurrent and overheat protection, an 11-phase power delivery, and some of the most complete RGB controls I've seen in a motherboard yet, let alone for one that only costs $109. The RGB is configurable in 3 zones, with LEDs that line the left side of the motherboard, and 2 additional RGB headers in the top right. These work amazingly well with the available BioStar Racing GT software, available from the BioStar website. BioStar's Racing GT software works very well for setting up lighting profiles, and while there aren't a ton of options out of the box to choose from, the ones that are there work quite well. You can set a static color, breathing effect, flicker, or you can have the LEDs react to music and sounds from your computer's audio output, which I think is a fantastic option to have. Booting my system for the first time, I ran into something just a little bit curious. My i7-8700K was overclocked slightly, running at 3.78 GHz rather than the stock 3.7. The memory was overclocked as well, posting at 2178 instead of the stock 2133 of DDR4. With XMP enabled, the memory jumped all the way to 2723 instead of the rated 2666. It wasn't until I installed the BioStar Racing GT software that I discovered the base clock is automatically set to 102 MHz on this board, rather than the stock 100. And outside of that program, I can't figure out where to change it. But every single reboot, I'm seeing the same numbers inside of BIOS, even after a BIOS reset, and setting it back to 100 MHz inside of the Racing GT software. A 2% overclock usually isn't worth talking about, but I did run into some performance issues with that 102 MHz base clock when I enabled XMP. On a few occasions, I experienced blue screens when trying to launch the Racing GT utility, or sometimes when even trying to change a setting inside of it, and observed performance in Cinebench that was nearly half of my stock testing, hitting 809 with XMP enabled versus 1431 at stock speeds. I don't typically mind if motherboard manufacturers include unique ways to overclock a non-overclockable board and SKU, but at the end of the day, those clocks have to be stable, and I need a way to disable them if they're not. Outside of running the Racing GT software every time Windows loads and manually setting the base clock back to 100 MHz, I don't seem to be able to adjust this. So I get to choose between using XMP and getting the full speed out of my memory, or an 80 MHz bump to my 8700K. I'd rather have the faster memory. So what are you missing out on by going with this B360 motherboard over a well-equipped Z370? Basically, it comes down to overclocking and SLI support. As of 2018, I'm calling multi-GPU systems a thing of the past as far as gaming goes, as only a few select titles handle SLI with explicit profiles, and even then, you're likely not going to see a return on your GPU investment. So if you don't plan on running multiple GPUs, and you don't plan on running Intel K-series CPUs, that is their overclockable SKUs, this board seems to have every other feature box checked. So what's the verdict here? On paper, the BioStar Racing B360 GT5S has almost every feature you could ask for. Dual NVMe ports, USB-C, excellent RGB lighting support, and the layout is well thought out, making installation and cable management a breeze. However, I'm going to hesitate recommending this one as it sits right now. With multiple blue screens both while launching and using the Racing GT software, to forced overclocks, to hints of RAM instability when XMP is enabled, at this time there's just too many little things that, while they might be workable to an advanced user, would frustrate the heck out of a person building a system for the first time. I will note though, if you're interested in this board, this all might be fixable through either software or BIOS updates, so stay tuned to their releases to see if all this works itself out. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to Modders Inc. if you're not already. Also, let me know down in the comments, With all the work and emphasis that BioStar is putting into RGB control on their motherboard, is that a feature you're still looking for integrated in the board, or would you rather add a third-party solution? Genuinely curious to know where you guys stack that one up. Also be sure to check out our Amazon store down in the video description for anything you need for your next builder upgrade. Thank you everyone for watching this one. As always, I'm Jeff, and I'll see you in the next video.